Hi guys, it's Theo from Robinson House Studio. In this video we're going to go through the tool list here we have at the school. This is what we send out to students who are coming here. So I'll go through this. You can download this list if you want to. You can see it in the kind of link and description because it does change from kind of time to time. But yeah, the general idea is that clearly if you come on a long course with us that you do have to come with your own tools. And I'll kind of go through that. It's not, you know, it is a long list, I guess, and some of them can kind of change. You can have your own tools and stuff, but we'll kind of go through it and I'll explain as I kind of go, you know, as I do it. So first thing on the kind of list, hand plane. So the one that I prefer personally, and lots of these that I will go through in a greater detail, I guess, you know what I mean, why I choose this, but just to try and keep this a little bit shorter, just so you can kind of, you know, people who are watching this that don't know anything about tools can be like, well, what do I actually need, you know, to do like a furniture making course or, you know, furniture making yourself. So a hand plane. So these are the kind of three main kind of hand planes, the, you know, block planes, but, you know, for planing timber. Low angle plane. So a low angle plane, you know, is my kind of one on the list. They do have a jack plane kind of here and then a block plane. For the low angle planes, my kind of first choice, I guess, is the Lie-Nielsen. This is the Lie-Nielsen 164 low angle plane. It's a smoothing plane. Smoothing plane's a little bit shorter than the jack planes. These are these ones. So that's the 164 Lie-Nielsen. It's very good, but this current climate, it's not really that readily available. So the second one of my choice is the Veritas. It's the smoothing plane. It's the Veritas low angle smoothing plane. Again, you can see this kind of on the list. So those are my top two, I guess. If you don't like low angle planes, then that's fine. Then some people prefer a jack plane. Then the Lie-Nielsen kind of jack plane is, let's say, like top of the list. But of course, it's quite expensive. So if you can't afford, you know, kind of one of these and you're on a real budget, then perhaps you go for this is a record jack plane, a record or Stanley kind of jack plane you could get. It's absolutely fine. And I haven't done it just yet, but I am going to do lots of different videos. And one of them is going to be more specifics of like what to look for to buy a plane. So I'll do that as a video and look for it in the description in my other videos. And I will kind of title things. I'm going to kind of catalog things. So lots of them will be like links to lots of our other videos, like an archive kind of thing. So we'll do another video on kind of buying hand planes. I'm going to do another video on kind of setting up and tuning a hand plane as well. So if you're watching this and it's been out for a while, well, clearly I've already made those. So you can buy which I did. I've already bought a plane to do this video, essentially. It cost me £60. So this one at the moment, I think it's like 300 and something pounds, maybe 380, something like that. I think it is. It's expensive. This one, £60. Could work very, you know, close to kind of this one, not quite, but there's a huge price difference there, especially if you're starting out. That's a big investment. So those are the kind of planes. Next thing on the list, block planes. So block planes are just small kind of hand plane, you know what I mean? Lots of these you are kind of using one-handed sometimes. On the tool list is either, let me just double check, it's the Lie-Nielsen number 60, which is this one. I have not massive hands, but quite big hands. So this one doesn't fit me that well. It's not as comfortable, I guess. And it doesn't have that much side, well, it does zero side-to-side adjustment. You have to kind of hit it with a hammer. So that's a little bit of a drawback for myself. I have experience, so I know how to kind of hit these things to adjust it. But if you're starting out, that can be a bit of a setback, having to manually kind of hit this with a hammer to kind of adjust it. So I go for the Veritas. This one is actually Mark's. This one's not mine. This one's Mark's. That one's Mark's, and that one's the students, but just using this to props to kind of borrow them. This is mine. This is the Veritas. Trying to check which one it is. Block plane. It's just a Veritas low angle block plane. I think there's a few different angles, but it's the block plane. There's one, I can't remember whether it's at 15 degrees or 20 degrees, and there's one at kind of 12 degrees, something like that. I think this is one at either 20 or 15, I can't remember, but it's the low angle block plane. I prefer this. It's a bit higher up and you can kind of hold on to it a bit more. Slightly bigger, slightly bigger than the other one, but again, it's my kind of personal choice. That's the one I prefer. And also this one does have a side-to-side adjustment, so you can kind of adjust the blade kind of side to side like this. So that's an advantage over this one. Next, shoulder planes. So this is a bit of a specialist one, I guess. I wouldn't necessarily go out and buy one of these, not unless you're going to need one, essentially. A tool like this is buy it when you need it. Whereas, you know, you're going to need one of these, whether you buy a jack plane or this, if you want to be a furniture maker really, or even once you want to tinker around in your shed, you're probably going to need kind of one of these, or your workshop. And a block plane, not straight away, but fairly important. When it comes to the shoulder planes, a bit more of a specialist kind of thing. But as a school, we do lots of mortise and tenons and things like that just for practicing. And it's, you know, bread and butter kind of using kind of some of those. So again, not that I have one here, but I just know that they're really good. I do like the Clifton, the 410 shoulder plane. So the 410 is a slightly different design to this, but a similar kind of size, similar width and similar kind of length. And the price is okay on the 410. The second one, and again, this one, it's the Clifton 400. This is the 400. This is really, really small kind of shoulder plane. As you can see, that I use this a lot for getting into rebates. But if you don't know what they are, some people will, some people won't, but don't worry about it. This one is for kind of leveling rebates if they're kind of misaligned. So I do use this a lot, this one. But for doing for doing tenons and shoulders, it's definitely this one. This one is one of the ones that used to be on the tool list. It's a Veritas. It's slightly bigger. It is quite expensive, so I would probably go for something around kind of this size. I do use this occasionally, but it doesn't get used as much as these two. So it's kind of one of those things. But does lots of tools like this. If you've got some tools already, well, some of them, if they're in the right price bracket, good Christmas gifts, you know what I mean, if you're kind of looking for things like that. Okay, shoulder plane, a dovetail saw. There are lots of different dovetail saws. I'm not going to go through all of them, but the one we kind of recommend, and it's a good price kind of range as well, is the Veritas. The Veritas, it's the, trying to remember, it's the Veritas fine tooth dovetail saw. It's this one here. This is the 20 TPI. I think there's another one that's a TPI means teeth per inch. So per an inch distance, there's 20 teeth in it. And then there's another one, I think it's 14 teeth per inch, so it just cuts a little bit faster. That's generally what it is. This one's a bit of a finer cut, essentially. But for the price, really good saws. After that, this is a big discussion, but we kind of recommend chisels. Chisels next on the list. It's hundreds and hundreds of different makes of chisels. So how do you kind of narrow it down? Well, we narrow it down to, you know, you can buy Lie-Nielsen, you could buy Veritas, you could buy all these different ones, but they're quite expensive. So the ones we kind of prefer, I'm not sure whether they do them in the States, we'll have to check, are the Ashley Isles chisels. So these ones here. We have them of beveled edge. So bevel just means it's got a bit of an angle on the two sides. And they're very good for doing dovetails and things like that. So they're good all-round kind of chisels. The steel's really good. The price is really good, and also sometimes they machine these that they've got a slight kind of concave kind of here. They're slightly curved here, so it's not like it's a bad thing, but like that, but only a tiny amount. So when you're flattening these and sharpening these, it's quite an easy thing to do. So we recommend the kind of Ashley Isles ones. Again, there's loads out there. The ones that I use, I'm a fan of Japanese chisels. Yeah, I'm a fan of Japanese chisels. Again, there's a huge range of those. They are quite expensive. The steel tends to be a bit harder, but then that makes them a bit more brittle as well. So you've got to be aware of that don't just go out if you do have a lot of money, don't just instantly jump on kind of Japanese ones because you think they're the best. Well, they are very good. They're fractionally harder than these, but that means that you could chip them and break them. And they're harder to flatten as well. That's why they're hollow on the back of them. But again, I'm not going to go massively into it. But I do like my Japanese chisels. I've also got, let's just call them standard kind of chisels, I guess, English kind of chisels. A variety of different makes. I've ended up making my own handles for these ones. I have a set of Japanese chisels, and then a smaller set of kind of standard beveled edged kind of chisels, more for dovetails, and I have them in a variety of sizes. But lots of these you can buy second hand. You could buy to a garage sale, car boot sale, something like that. Buy them for £3 or £4 and clean them up a little bit, so you don't have to spend an absolute fortune on chisels. Next one, dovetail markers. Again, this is only if you need to do dovetails, but at the school we do, of course. So dovetail markers. The Veritas one is on our list. We do it, the way I kind of teach dovetails. It doesn't have to be. It's in a 1 and 8, so I'll buy a 1 and 8 dovetail marker. If you're kind of a bit lost on that, don't worry about it. I'm not going to go through it now because I don't want to make this video too long, but 1 and 8 is basically just it's this side. It's the angle that's at. If it's 1 and 8, it's kind of a shallower angle. 1 and 6 is kind of a steeper kind of angle, kind of like that essentially. So Veritas is a very good one, a 1 and 8 Veritas dovetail marker. Just a bit of a plug that I actually sell a dovetail marker as well. I haven't quite got it on my website just yet, but yeah, it's a dovetail marker. I've done that. I've made this one. This has been engineered and made for me, but it will be on my website. If you are interested, you can kind of take a look. It's just a different design. It's a different design to this one, essentially, that hooks over the top. Similar to this, but slight improvements over this one. But yeah, you can check that out if you want to. And again, I'll do another video on this at some stage. And engineering squares, very important. If you want to make if you're planing timber a necessity, you have to have engineering squares. You could start off with a smaller one, kind of one like this. I don't know whether this is 4 inches, kind of something like that, I don't know. This is 6 inches. So 2, you could get 1 to start with, or you could get 2. Don't buy the cheapest straight edge engineering square. Spend a little bit of money on them, because if you buy one that you bought at, I don't know, like B&Q or Walmart or something like that, they're not going to be square, you know what I mean? So do invest a little bit in these and you won't be kind of disappointed. I think the one we've kind of recommended, engineering square, was it Charway? I don't know I don't know that make, but I know it's from a reputable company. I think it's from Workshop Heaven, that one, so I know it will be quite good. So do a bit of research on those before you kind of, you don't have to spend too much, but spend a little bit, I guess. Engineering square, straight edge. This is a straight edge. Again, this one is a Starrett number 385 straight edge. You don't have to buy this specific one. This one is quite expensive. It was £100. It's probably gone up now. It's got a slight bevel. I don't know if you guys can kind of see it. It's got a bevel here, so it means it's got a thin edge there, and it's nice and flat on the side of it. You need to spend, again, it's one of those things that if you go and buy a straight edge and it's £30, $40, whatever, it's probably not going to be straight. They may advertise it as straight, but then you'll get it home and you'll draw some lines with it, or even check it on something that is straight, a machine bed or something like that. And if it's not straight, just go in the bin. It's useless. So around about £100 or under, you can spend on something like this. For an engineer, you could spend £300 or £400 on something like this, but it's guaranteed to be completely straight. This one is straight to a certain standard, and it's straight enough, you know what I mean? So you need to have something like this to check the underneath of your planes, and then mainly when you're planing timber, you need to see whether it's straight or not. You can't use a ruler to check whether it's straight. They're not guaranteed straight. So a good straight edge is kind of a necessity if you want to be planing kind of timber. And I would buy one that's this one's 24 inches or 600 millimeters. That's a kind of good size. Getting a smaller one is not really that helpful. So good straight edge, and look after it as well. You know what I mean? If you're spending that much money on something, look after it, especially if it's going to be in a shed or somewhere outside. These can rust as well. So do kind of treat them well, and they'll look after you. Straight edge, a wooden mallet. That's pretty much of a no-brainer, really. It's still on the list though, clearly, because our students sometimes have nothing. So a wooden mallet. I've got one here, just Workshop Heaven, 3-inch round wooden mallet. I've made this one, I've made, not this one because someone else made it for me, but I've made one that's almost identical, but it's worn down and cracked and stuff like that. So I've got this one made for me now, but a similar one to this anyway. It's my style, but it's up to your preference, really. Digital calipers. So, digital calipers, they don't have, this is an old set of digital calipers. Again, a necessity for so many things, so many joints, so many processes, mainly for if you're hand planing lots of things. If you're just kind of starting out, then you're going to be hand planing stuff, probably. Then you need to know what thickness it is. Or you're not going to use a ruler to measure it, because a ruler's not accurate to 0.01 of a millimeters. And also you can change these to inches and stuff like that. But I, for the most part, work in millimeters, sometimes inches. But this one here, clearly they're digital calipers. The ones we recommend are the Mitutoyo ones. Again, you'll have to look for spellings and stuff like that. That's why I probably download the list. It's the Mitutoyo. They're 150 millimeters kind of long. You won't be disappointed with this kind of brand. Starrett does one, but when you feel Starrett versus the Mitutoyo kind of ones, that it just feels a lot more kind of, the quality looks, is good on these. Around about 80, 90 pounds, something like that for a good set of these. And again, you won't be disappointed. I wouldn't go and buy one that's like, oh, there's one for 30 pounds or 15, or you know what I mean, a really cheap set. They're going to be garbage. They're not going to be any good. So around about that kind of price. It starts stacking up. So do it in bite-sized pieces, you know what I mean. Right, what's spring dividers? Again, this is more for if you're doing dovetails. It's not a kind of necessity, but spring dividers, because there's a spring on here and you just kind of undo this. This is for when you start marking out dovetails and stuff like that. You don't have to use one of these, but we do at the school, so that's why they're on there. Spring dividers, marking gauge. Marking gauge, there's a few different marking gauges out there, but this is my kind of preferred one. This is for when you're doing dovetails, mortise and tenons, joints and things like that, when you're marking a parallel kind of line. I really like this one. This is the Veritas. This is a Veritas micro adjust wheel marking gauge. The reason why it says micro adjust is you adjust this to kind of what size you need, lock that off kind of here, and then you've got this little thing you undo, and then the end you can kind of adjust it very slightly. You can micro adjust it very slightly, and then use your digital calipers. Sometimes you've got to be very careful because it's a sharp blade there. Check that it's the correct dimension, and then you can kind of lock off this one. So I really like these. Got a very sharp blade and it cuts a very nice sharp line. Because if you have kind of an old-fashioned marking gauge that's instead of a circular blade, it's like a point, almost like a pencil kind of point. If that's not very sharp and you're getting your shoulder line, or where you're going to put your chisel into, is all like scratched and dented and it's terrible, you're going to have a terrible joint. Yeah, if I didn't have a very sharp one of these, my dovetails would be rubbish because I've kind of dented and squished a line and my chisel's not going to go into it very well. So a good marking gauge is a good investment. Right, what's next on the list? Scalpels. Again, this is not an essential kind of item. For the school it is, because the way I teach our students to cut dovetails, we use scalpels to kind of mark things out. They're fairly inexpensive, you know what I mean? And if it gets dull or the end, then you just replace them. You take the blade out and replace it. So scalpels are always useful for any toolbox, really. Scalpel ear defenders. Again, this should be like a pretty obvious one that you're going to need ear defenders, because here at the school we clearly have power tools, we have machines and stuff like that, and it's completely your preference, but look after your ears. It's a very important thing. What's the next one? Yeah, safety goggles. Again, just on your preference, I guess, which goggles you kind of fit you and what have you. Rulers. Okay, rulers. Like, again, this is your kind of preference. I'd say you need to have one that's a 6-inch ruler, 300 ruler, 600 ruler, and a meter ruler. Like these ones are Fisher, like they're from Japan. The reason why I like these ones is they've got kind of, it's in millimeters, but it is on the back side. It's inches as well, because sometimes that comes in handy. And then on this kind of top side, it's got the millimeter marks and it's got the ½ millimeter marks. And then on the bottom side, it's just got the millimeter marks. So it's nice and clear, you know what I mean? But a decent ruler. There are other rulers out there, but just sometimes they'll have millimeters, no inches. Clearly in America they might have inches, no millimeters. It's your kind of preference, but those kind of sizes are pretty good and pretty important, I guess, and always going to be useful, really. A different kind of saws. These are called, this one is the Q Concept. This is, it comes from the States, I guess, so you guys will have these out there. In the UK, it's from Workshop Heaven. There's a kind of a range of these on the Workshop Heaven website. I'm trying to think which one it is. It's the Mark III saw. Again, you'll see it in the kind of list. £80. It's a great design, nice and light, and you can kind of skew the blade over. So when you're cutting kind of parallel, it can be like this. This one here, this is more like a fret saw type thing, that cheaper, a lot cheaper than that one. This one, like I said, is 80 something pounds. This one you probably buy for 25, 30, something like this. But this one can only cut kind of parallel. It cuts in kind of, you know, down like this or across like that because you're doing dovetails. This one you can't change the angle of the blade. So if you've got long dovetails, well, you can't reach the middle of it. Whereas this one, because the blade is kind of skewed, I'm cutting kind of like this. The blade is, you know what I mean? This is kind of at an angle. So I like these one. And again, good Christmas gift or birthday gift. This is what mine was. This was from my parents for Christmas gift. The same blades fit in both essentially, but we won't go through that now. Spoke shave. So this one kind of wasn't on the tool list, and I put it on the tool list kind of recently because the spoke shaves, the students, we have got loads of spoke shaves here because we do weekend courses and week courses and stuff like that, so we've got lots of spoke shaves. So we used to let the students kind of go, oh, we'll test these out and then get them afterwards. But actually now, because my preferred spoke shave is such a cheap item to buy, that why not get it kind of, you know what I mean, before you start the course. So the spoke shave that I go for or recommend is the Stanley number 63 curved bottom spoke shaved, as in it's curved in this direction. There's no point having a flat bottom spoke shave and this one, because this one will do flat stuff, or your block plane will do flat stuff, but this one clearly will do your curves. So there's no point having two, just have the curved bottom one. And the reason why I like this one, it works amazingly. Don't think, oh, well, I see there's a record one, and I have one, a record one that's got adjustable, you know, it adjusts here. It hasn't got the same angle as this one, so it doesn't work quite as well. So I've used these for many, many years, and I've tried lots of different spoke shaves, and this one is fantastic. For the price point, these, always buy them second hand. The new versions of these, they're a different casting, they're a new cast, they don't work quite as well as these. Why not just buy them second hand? eBay, between £15, £20, you'll find a decent one. You've got to look at how much life there is left in the blade and things like that. So it doesn't take a lot of work to kind of bring it up to being a usable tool. You know, I mean, they're really good for what they are. And I've borrowed Mark's spoke shave. This is a Lie-Nielsen spoke shave. Again, this is a curved bottom on it. This one has a tighter curve on it, so this one gets into tighter spaces. This one's a bit shallower, but price, I think off the top of my head, maybe over £100 anyway. Over £100. The blade is thicker, so it's easier to sharpen. This is a very thin blade, but there's a huge price difference there. So for the most part, when the students are starting, you know, we don't want to have them spending £2,000 to get all their toolkit together. So that's why I quite like the budget kind of spoke shave that works really well. Yes, there's a tiny bit more work to it, but it doesn't have to be, not like this plane here. This plane here, jack plane, needs to be perfectly flat to get it to work. I mean perfectly flat, but I'll go through that in another video. So that needs to be perfectly flat. This is a curved bottom. It does not need to be flat. It needs to be flat between here and here, but this is hardened steel. Yeah, they've cast it and then they've hardened it. And if you need to sand this, it's quite an easy thing to do. You can have this fixed in a few minutes, you know what I mean? And if the blade's not flat, well, you can make it flat, you know what I mean? So, because it's very small, so I'd always recommend those. And if, yeah, budget is no, you know what I mean, no question on spending money, and then yeah, the Lie-Nielsen one is nice, of course it is, but neither of those has adjustments apart from hitting it with a hammer. Spoke shave, screwdriver and bits. Again, this one's something I've added to the list, this new list I've kind of done. When we do lock fitting, you know, hinge fitting, stuff like that, we're using screws. You're putting in screws, and not one of my bugbears, but for some of you watching this who have got experience, using the wrong screwdriver for the wrong head screw. So when you're using a flat head screw, like the top of here, if you choose like a really small kind of screwdriver bit to go into it, you mangle the side of it and all the rest of it. If you do that on screws for hinges and you twist it out, well, that screw is ruined. So buying and these are fairly, this one, I haven't got my nice set, I've got a nicer one of these, this, you know, a ratchet screwdriver. Everyone should have one of those in their toolkit, you know what I mean? And just buy a kind of a range of heads, yeah, that clearly click into those, and you can use these with cordless drills and stuff like that. Not necessarily flat heads, but when it comes to Phillips head, posi heads, stuff like that, that for spending, you know, £20 on a set like that, it will do you a world of good in your toolkit anyway. Right, screwdriver bits, drill bits. So drill bits that I'd recommend, I haven't got them kind of here, but drill bits, I'd recommend a box of 1 to 13 millimeters. For you guys in the States, clearly we've been imperial, but it's, you know what I mean. For us at the school, we have got a couple of boxes of drill bits. We've got the metal, high-speed steel drill bits for drilling metal. They can drill wood, but they're not that good. Or that you have the brad point spur center. Again, I'll do another video on drill bits and all different kind of things like that, just because you'd be like, what, HSA bits and all the rest of it. Wood bits, and then there's some metal bits as well. So I kind of recommend a box of each, ranging from 1 millimeters up to 13 millimeters, and then the same thing in the, oh no, actually you can't get them in that many, in the brad points. They basically cut a lot cleaner in wood, essentially. The brad points or spur center are for cutting into wood. They cannot cut into metal because you'll ruin them. They have like a point or a spike on them, and they have these 2 points on the side, but you can only get them in kind of 1/2 mil kind of increments, and you can't get them in a millimeter. I think they start at 3 millimeters, if memory serves me right, and then they go up in 1/2 mil increments up to 13 millimeters. So I'd recommend a set of each, essentially. Yeah, that's kind of it, I guess. So that's a kind of like, I've got lots of more specialist tools. Of course, you can spend way more money, but this is the general kind of collection of things that you need, especially for when you kind of start the school. I've got loads more because I've been making furniture before I became a teacher, 20 years before, you know, so I collected things when I kind of needed it. So that's how it goes. You go, oh, I need to do this job. Oh, I'll buy a tool for it. This kind of tutorial or this lesson, I guess, is hand tools. I will do another video on power tools and machines and kind of things like that. Also, if you want to ask any questions, then drop a comment kind of down below. I like to do my videos where if people ask lots of questions, then I'll do part 2. Like if I've missed anything and you think, oh, why didn't you add that? Ask the question down below, you know, write a comment, and then if I get lots of comments on the same thing, I'm going to do part 2 or part 3, because I want to kind of help you guys out. That's the whole point. Yeah, and if you want to subscribe to the channel, clearly subscribe and you'll be updated with, yeah, the latest videos, share, I guess, all that kind of YouTube stuff. Like it, dislike it, you kind of, you know, you decide. But anyway, well, thank you very much for watching it this far, and yeah, brilliant. See you next time.